automotive industry is undergoing a massive transformation globally, what with the shift to EVs, autonomous driving, or software-defined vehicles. There are several challenges being faced, but there are humongous opportunities that lie ahead as well. And to tell us more about how technology companies like Autodesk can enable their customers to tap into these future opportunities, we have with us Dr. Andrew Anagnost, CEO Autodesk. Dr. Andrew, thank you so much for speaking with AutoCAD Professional.
Thank you for speaking with me.
So I want to first start off with, how do you see companies are facing challenges globally with respect to the shift to sustainable transportation or sustainable mobility when we talk per se about the automotive sector?
There's obviously several factors that are coming into play here. Battery technology is one of them. Batteries are still very expensive. The energy capacity to get the kind of capacity people want is still challenging. Recyclability of the battery packs are a big challenge. So battery tech will continue to be a challenge, but there's lots of innovation going on there. The other thing is global charging networks and charging infrastructure. People need to know that they can charge their cars like they refill the gas in their current gas-powered vehicles.
True.
And everybody's struggling with the charging infrastructure. And when you look at the batteries and you look at the infrastructure to support it, the supply chains are a big challenge as well. I mean, let's face it, some of these batteries are hungry for rare earth metals and other types of materials that are actually only available in several choices, in several areas. So people have to manage the supply chains and the things associated with that. And it's also really challenging in the world of technology disruption to balance the old way of doing things with the new way of doing things. You see this with the automotive companies all over the world. It's like you make all your money off of an internal combustion engine and an internal combustion vehicle, yet you have to invest a ton of money into these electric vehicles while they ramp up slowly, given all these other challenges.
True.
Everybody is dealing with that challenge, and that's a challenge that's associated with how can you build these electric vehicles cheaper.
Right.
And obviously the last piece, and you kind of talked about this a little bit, is cars are increasingly becoming more like smartphones.
Absolutely.
Than they are like cars, and the experience of a car is very much connected to software integration, hardware integration, all sorts of devices that are inside the car. Huge challenges for people trying to design modern cars, especially when you combine that with the concept of autonomy and the things associated with that. What is a car like when it can drive itself?
Yeah.
It's now a moving office, or a moving house, or a moving social club.
Absolutely.
These are big challenges, and everybody's struggling with how to bring these things together.
Right. So, Dr. Andrew, what role does technology play here in enabling the industry to sort of circumnavigate these challenges or sort of manage the change that is happening at such a fast pace?
Well, so what's exciting about what's going on right now is the design of electric vehicles and new types of sustainable vehicles looks at design processes that are completely different than what has been put forward for designing internal combustion vehicles.
Okay.
You're moving away from managing intense mechanical complexity to managing systems integration and software integration and experience integration.
Right.
Tools have a huge part to play in this. The processes are very different. An electric vehicle is built differently than a standard car is.
Right.
And what we can do is we can help with part simplification, because if you can minimize the number of parts that are in a car, you manufacture it more efficiently. We can help with lightweighting using less materials, choosing the right materials, the right kind of materials that actually not only allow you to build the vehicle cheaper and more effectively, but also are more recyclable in the future and contribute to the life cycle, the sustainability of the product. So there's a whole bunch of areas where technology can assist people in making the right decisions, but also in managing a completely new life cycle that's moving a lot faster than the traditional old life cycle. And technology is going to be not only important in enabling that, but it's going to be important in driving down the cost of these vehicles long term.
Right. And also if we see right now, there are several buzzwords, AI, ML, connectivity, digital transformation. Like, are these really simply buzzwords, or do they really play a very important role in this entire transformation?
Well, they're both. They're both buzzwords and important pieces of it. I think AI has captured the collective consciousness, because things like ChatGPT, things like DALL-E, all the image creation tools, all these things you see have made it real for the layperson.
Right.
Software has been using AI for a long time. Companies like Autodesk, we've been using software for over a decade.
Right.
AI for over a decade. Machine learning is a core part of how we do things. Generative AI has changed people's perception of how AI works. But the fundamentals here, in order to exploit these technologies, are still the same. People need to digitize. They need to move away from these processes that are constantly broken by paper or by disconnected processes. And to do that, they increasingly need to move to the cloud and use data-driven applications versus file-based applications.
Right.
And this is what unlocks the power of AI. And AI can do some amazingly powerful things to automate how people design. Like, for instance, there's things that are really exciting. Like, look, will AI someday generate an entire car?
Right.
Probably.
Okay.
That's not going to happen anytime soon. But today, people are struggling with really kind of boring productivity things. Like, to manufacture a car, you have to produce stacks of drawings that are thousands of drawings.
Right.
All right, which is just a huge burden on an engineer. We can automate the creation of all of that with AI-driven tools.
Right.
We can also reduce the amount of time it takes to create a 3D model of an entire car from months to weeks or even days or hours. These are things that we can do with AI. So AI's potential is very, very real, but you have to go on the journey to get there. You can't just keep using the old tools and processes you were before. You have to take the leap into the world of the cloud. You have to take the leap into finding ways to create a complete digital thread for your data, and then you have to figure out how to cooperate with the AI to create new types of designs.
Right.
But it's absolutely both hype and reality.
Right. So it brings an element of agility, flexibility to these companies and what they're undertaking in terms of their product development activities, their R&D. And what sense are you getting? I mean, the uptake of these technologies right now, is it coming more from the new age companies, the startups in the mobility domain, or even the established companies are also very eager to jump on this bandwagon?
So startups are absolutely on this technology very early. I mean, we highlighted a company at our users conference recently, an Indian company, Vave, which is doing personal mobility. They're doing personal mobility electric vehicles, and they absolutely jump into this technology with a lot of enthusiasm. But we've also worked with larger manufacturers. Rivian is another example. It's a startup in the US. They've looked at Fusion and some of our tools to reimagine their design process, but also to reimagine some of their manufacturing processes. So startups definitely are much more comfortable. But the established players realize if they're going to change, some of the tools and systems they use today are going to have to evolve as well. But they have a huge investment in some of these old systems, which is always the challenge. So startups kind of show the way. And as you can see, startups, especially in the world of electric mobility, they're much more successful than the existing players right now. And that pressure is, I think, going to drive real change with the established players. And that change is not only going to be what they create, but how they create it. But you're absolutely right. New companies adapt new technology much more agilely and much more rapidly than the established players. But they all know they have to get there.
Understood. And if you talk about sustainability, when you're looking at sustainability, you have to look at it holistically.
Yes.
And there are several companies which are already looking at a design-driven approach to sustainability, wherein they factor in recyclability, circularity, considering the end of life of the particular product. So your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think this is an emerging trend in the market going forward? I mean, all companies, if they're talking about sustainability, they have to really transform, beginning from the design stage itself.
It's more than just an emerging trend. I'll give you an example. In our architecture, engineering, and construction space, we already have tools that guide the user early on in the design process to make the right kind of material choices. So they can look at embedded carbon, and they can look at life cycle carbon of a particular design. And these tools are not only driven by interactive libraries, but they're also driven by AI suggestions in terms of, nope, don't do that, do this. So these material selection tools, they have to become mainstream for a lot of people. And AI can play a role in capturing when someone's making the wrong material choice. So the future of collaborative AI that augments the designer and works with the designer actually watches the decisions they're making and in real time gives them suggestions about what they're doing. So these tools are rapidly becoming mainstream. Like I said, in architecture, engineering, construction, we have a tool called Forma that will absolutely interrupt the user's flow and say, no, you might want to look at this scenario as opposed to this scenario. The same thing is coming to manufacturing as well. So these tools and decision support for life cycle carbon and circularity, these are absolutely going to become mainstream, and they're going to become indisposable tools to a lot of engineers and designers.
Right. And the more a company sort of leverages these tools, the more the model becomes more mature and it offers you better suggestions, better recommendations.
Well, that's the whole thing. This is why it's so important as people mature their processes that they move away from these kind of static file sharing based processes to processes where they're using database driven tools that actually continue to learn off of what they're doing. The AI is only as good as the data you feed it.
Absolutely.
And the data you feed it has to be at a level of granularity that provides enough context so that the AI can get intelligent about what you're actually doing. And it's all connected, right? The future and the processes are all connected to moving on to new types of tools that actually know how to learn.
Right, right. And broadly, Dr. Andrew, your thoughts about the key challenges and opportunities globally in the automotive sector when we talk about new product development in electrification, autonomous driving, and software-defined vehicles.
Yeah, you see that, you hit it right there, all right? There's actually a trifecta of things that are impacting the automotive industry right now. Electrification is obviously the big one, but autonomy is not going away. And autonomy is going to drive a revolution in how a car is designed. And that revolution is software is also connected to what I like to call the experience, which you called software-defined vehicles. All of these things are hitting the automotive industry at once. If you get in a car now, and I rent cars sometimes when I travel, and when you sit in a car and you have a bad user interface, you feel it immediately now.
Yes.
It used to be that an automotive company could get away with a really clunky human interaction. Now I feel like, wow, why are all these buttons here? I can't figure. You are actually annoyed.
Absolutely.
All right, and so the bar for companies now in terms of designing a user experience is a lot more like what we do with software, and that is a really disruptive force. So they have to deal with all of these things simultaneously right now, and I think it's creating a huge cultural change in the automotive industry, and I think we're only at the very beginning of that cultural change. I mean, right now in San Francisco in the U.S., they have the Waymo vehicles, and they have this creepy steering wheel thing as you're driving along. Okay, nobody likes that creepy steering wheel thing because it looks like a ghost is driving you around. But the future is there's no steering wheel. And matter of fact, you probably have benches and you're sitting there facing each other. What do you do inside the car? Your car needs to be your mobile office. It needs to be your mobile entertainment. It could be your mobile party. This is huge, all right? And all of these things are happening simultaneously.
Right, right. And a part of this cultural transformation also is like a mindset shift which is required at companies which are developing these products. Because if we talk about, this is a very new space for everybody. And companies, do you believe, are really struggling when it comes to the skill sets they have with the engineers who are coming in? I mean, they really need to unlearn a lot first and then learn a lot of new skills. And how do you see the industry can tackle this challenge going forward?
It's interesting. No matter where I am in the world, no matter what industry I'm talking to, they all struggle with a capacity problem. There's not enough people with the right kind of skills. There's not enough material or capacity to create things, and there's not enough money to do it all. Everybody struggles with this.
Right.
The skills problem is universal.
Okay.
People see that there's lots of people out there who do things, but they're not people that are trained with the right kind of skills and tool sets. That's why at Autodesk we're pretty passionate about the role of education and all these things. We do not charge for our software and education. This is something that a lot of people don't realize, and they think, well, if you're not charging for it, what's the catch? Right? The catch is, we want the workforce of the future to know how to use the most advanced tools. And we want to lower the barriers of access to those advanced tools, because every one of our customers is asking us, I want to use these tools, but the kids come out of school, they don't understand the latest tools, they don't understand the latest technology. What can you do for us? And this is what we've done. And I think this is a critical thing for all of us to work together on. It's a government policy issue, but it's also a software development issue. We need to make these tools easier, and we need to make sure that the students are getting access to them, and we need to make sure the workers of the future get access to these tools to do what they need to do to or design the cars and machines of the future.
Right. And with that, in that context itself, if I may ask you about, what possibility do you see or what potential do you see of India with its humongous, talent, our engineering resource? I mean, do you see India becoming a global superpower when it comes to product development, R&D going forward, considering within the automotive space itself?
India has three great things going for it right now. One, it has a growing and vibrant culture of innovation.
Okay.
Innovation is absolutely growing in India. It's been growing for decades.
Right.
And this is really important. But at the same time, it's also got growing economic opportunity inside the country, which is very important because it feeds the thirst for innovation.
Right.
And you add to that the last kind of leg of the stool. India has a young population,
yeah.
right? Half the population is younger than 30.
Correct.
Right? When you combine that with growing economic opportunity and a cycle of innovation, that younger population wants new things,
right.
and they also are willing to explore new things. So that is a huge advantage. And by the way, it's a unique advantage right now in the world right now to have all three of those things moving.
Right.
Other countries had some of those things in the past, but they've lost them.
Correct.
Right? India has all three.
Right.
And that provides India a unique opportunity to play fairly significant roles in the global innovation economy and possibly produce the next big global brand in automotive.
Okay.
And I think that opportunity absolutely exists, and India is in a unique position right now to kind of move forward in that direction.
Right. On that optimistic note, Dr. Andrew, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.